Hi everyone, we're going to look in this example at an equation that starts off in standard form. So we've got this f of x equals negative 4x squared minus 2x plus 42. And we're first asked to find the y-intercept, and I would just reiterate that this is the form that it's most convenient to find the y-intercept from. So bottom line, what I really want you to remember is that to find a y-intercept, you let x equal 0. But as a secondary thing, if you have room for remembering more things, it's nice to remember or be able to spot that when you do that in this equation, basically the 4x squared is going to be 0, the 2x is going to be 0, all that's left is going to be the 42. So your intercept is at 0, 42, and you can get that without even really doing that work if you're paying attention. So standard form, very nice for finding the y-intercept. It's also very easy to see whether the graph opens up or down. So since we have a negative 4 out in front, this graph is going to open down. It's definitely quadratic, so we know we're expecting a parabola. So we've got some good information to start. We've got a general shape, and we know where we cross the y-axis. The next part of this asks us to write the equation in factored form. And factored form is very handy for finding the x-intercepts, which is why that is linked right onto the same question. So I would definitely start by factoring out that common factor of 2, and personally, I prefer factoring when the x squared has a positive coefficient, so I'm going to make that a negative 2 that I factor out. So remember, you're dividing everything by negative 2 and putting it out in front. So negative 4 over negative 2 is 2. Negative 2 over negative 2 is 1, and you don't have to write the 1, of course. 42 over negative 2 is negative 21. That's partially factored. It's not fully factored. Sometimes you won't be able to do better than that, and in that case, to find your intercepts, you're going to have to complete the square or use a quadratic formula. But I think I can do better in this one. I want a 2x and an x. And then I want factors of 21. I'm trying to get a 1 in the middle, so I think I'm going to choose the 7 and the 3. And I even think I want them in this order so that my outside is 6x and my inside is 7x. So if that's a positive 7x and a negative 6x, I should get that 1x in the middle and be all set. Okay, so the reason that this form is powerful for finding the x-intercept is if we now say, oh, well, to find an x-intercept, set y equal to 0. Again, that's the most important thing to remember. All this other stuff is just secondary and sometimes helpful. If this is already factored, we save ourselves a lot of work. We could say, okay, well, the only way to multiply these three, negative 2, 2x plus 7, and x minus 3, and get 0 is if one of them was equal to 0. So either negative 2 has to be 0, which we could throw away right away because negative 2 just is not 0, or 2x plus 7 has to be 0, or x minus 3 has to be 0 to make this a true statement. 2x minus 7 equals 0 only if 2x and negative 7 are equal to each other. Subtract 7 from both sides, which is true only when x is negative 7 halves. Divide both sides by 2. On the right-hand side, we're going to add 3 to both sides, so x equals 3. And those are our two, I shouldn't circle them yet. Those are our two solutions. What we were asked for are what are the x-intercepts. So we're going to say negative 7 halves 0 is one intercept, and 3, 0 is the other intercept. And that's what I will actually circle. Okay, find the vertex of the graph. So we actually have several ways we can do this. We have a trick, x equals negative b over 2a. We have, that doesn't look like a 2, another trick, which is write it in vertex form. Generally, I wouldn't do that work unless I needed to for some other reason. That's more work than the other tricks. The third one is if you know where your x-intercepts are, you can just average them. You can say if my graph crosses the x-axis at 3 and at negative 3.5, it has to have a vertex exactly in the middle of those. That would be, the vertex is always on the axis of symmetry. So the x-intercepts, any 2 points with the same y value, have to be equal distance from that. Or probably that's the more complicated way to say it. The easier way is probably to say the vertex is always exactly in the middle of the two x-intercepts. So to average those, you could just add them up, -7/2 plus 3 over 2. Which 3 minus 3.5 is -1/2 over 2, which is, my 2's keep going funny, -1/4. So we would have to have a vertex at -1/4. It's really close in there. So again, this is still pretty rough, but now we're picturing we cross the axis there and we have a vertex with an x coordinate of -1/4. Note, if we've gone back to x equals -b over 2a, that's using standard form to find the vertex, which is completely valid as well. I know some of you will like that better. So if b is -2, then the opposite of b is +2. And if a is -4, that's what that looks like. Cancel out the 2's and you're getting -1/4. So exactly the same answer. I'm not saying that one way is better than the other. You pick your favorite amongst those two. But if you already have it in factored form, this one's maybe kind of a wash. But when your intercepts are both integers, it's sometimes you don't even have to do work. You can just look and say, well, if it crosses the x-axis at 0 and 4, then the vertex is halfway in the middle at 2. So keep that one in mind. It can be a really nice way to find your vertex. The vertex is a point, so I actually do have a little more work. I need to go ahead and plug that -1/4 into the original function. So I should write f of -1/4. So the original function will square that, which makes it 1/16, and then multiply by -4, and then it'll subtract 2 times the input, -1/4, and then it will add 42. So I'm seeing here, here I'm going to scooch up a little so I can write -1/4 plus 1/2 plus 42. -1/4 plus 1/2 ends up just being 1/4. A half minus a fourth is a fourth. So we're really getting 42 and a fourth. You can turn that into, usually I don't like mixed numbers, but actually here I think I'm going to break that rule for myself and say if I'm trying to plot the vertex, I actually do kind of like that. So you can turn it back into an improper fraction. You'd have to multiply 42 by 4, so 168 plus 1, 169 fourths. Go for it, but I actually like the 42 fourths for graphing purposes. So my vertex is at -1/4, 42 and a fourth. Okay, so my last job is to just put all those pieces together. The work we did to find those things should feel really similar to what we were doing last week. So now, just putting it all together, I need to be able to fit some fairly big y values, 42 and a fourth for the vertex and 42 for the y-intercept. And then my dog squeaking his toy. The x-intercepts are at -3.5 and 3. So let's just go 1, 2, 3, 4. -1, 2, 3, 4. And then we'll go 10, 20, 30, 40. So just really important to label your scale. If you didn't, I would have no idea that those were 10, 20, 30, 40 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4. We need to cross the y-axis at 42. Since it's not completely obvious where that dot is, I'm going to label it. If it lands right on a tick mark, that's great, but if not, label it for me. The vertex is super close to that, -1/4, 42 and a fourth, so just barely higher. 42 and 1/4. And then we cross the x-axis at 3. And here, let's go ahead and label those as points. This one's really okay. It's on the tick mark, so if you just want to leave it that way, that's fine. But here I'd say this is negative, I already forgot what I was doing. -3.5, yeah, -7/2, 0. Okay, so I like to start from my vertex just because it kind of reminds me that I'm curving down from there. So it shouldn't have a point at the vertex. It should kind of round down and then cross that axis, and it just keeps getting steeper as you go. And then this side should be a perfect mirror image. Mine, of course, is not going to be perfect, and I don't expect yours to be. But if yours start looking really lopsided, I am going to pick on you a little bit about that. Try to make that symmetry show through. Okay, hope that helped. Thanks for watching.